What if I told you there was a movie about rock climbing, secret agents, assassins, albinos, and sex? You probably think there's too many things to be in one movie, right? Like, sometimes less is more. That's not the case for this movie. The Eiger Sanction is a rock climbing movie-ish from 1975, and boy does it show that this movie's from 1975. The movie opens up with a pretty epic knife fight. At no point does it look like these two men are struggling for their lives. It looks like two people pretending to knife fight. Anyway, after this character dies, we meet Clint Eastwood's character, who's a teacher giving a lecture at a university.
Some of you will continue with your education. Some of you, I hope, will continue with your interest in art. Some of you will have other interests, other talents.
Is he insinuating that she's gonna be like a whore when she grows up? I mean, he is. This is also where our first ass slap takes place. Now, I thought this would be the only ass slap in the movie. You know, I was like, it's 1975, they gotta have an ass slap in there. No, there's a few more, and this one's actually less weird than the one that happens later.
Break out the books, study your little ass off. That's the best way to maintain a B average.
So we find out Clint Eastwood is an ex-assassin, and he's got to get back into the business, but he meets this guy. Needless to say, this guy is not his buddy. just put it that way. He's not his buddy. Don't ever call him your buddy, all right?
Get your feet off my desk.
Now look here, buddy.
Don't call me buddy, pal or sweetheart.
So we find out that Clint Eastwood has to meet with this guy called the Dragon, and Clint Eastwood going to meet the Dragon leads to probably one of the most well-written and well-acted scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
Or germs. Are you healthy?
Shall I turn my head and cough?
No known infections.
Nothing other than the usual. Syphilis, running sores, and clap.
All right. Go in.
So we find out that the Dragon is actually the albino leader of the bad guy group that wants Clint Eastwood to commit an assassination. That's about the gist of the entire movie. And the fact that he's an albino is very important because Clint Eastwood makes references to it all the time and has to make jokes about it.
Mr. Dragon does not like to be kept waiting.
Oh, the impatient albino.
I don't think Mr. Dragon's affliction is a joking matter.
I thought it was rather humorous myself. A spy network being run by a bloodless freak who can't stand light or cold.
So Clint Eastwood goes off on his first assassination mission, and we get our first taste of rock climbing here. Before we get into the actual assassination, it's important to know that the reason that they picked Clint Eastwood's character for this, the reason they pulled him out of retirement, was because he is the best of the best. There is no one better at being an assassin than him, and a rock climber. That's his dual skill set. So it's important to remember all these things when we watch the flawless assassination that's pulled off by Clint Eastwood.
Look out!
He went into the assassination armed, and the guy he was fighting was unarmed, and he still almost lost the fight. The guy brought a book to a gunfight, and he still almost won. Now, there's a lot that happens in this movie, a lot that happens in this movie. So to save you some time and some pain, because I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of this movie that's not very good, I'll summarize the major plot points, which are that there are 2 targets he has to kill. He got one, barely. And the second one is trying to climb a mountain in Switzerland known as the Eiger North Face. The problem is they don't know who the guy is. They just know he's going to make the climb. So Clint Eastwood has to make the climb with the group going and try to figure out somewhere along the ascent of this mountain who his target is and kill him. This is actually a really, really cool plot for a movie. Like, just the idea of being in this deadly situation and having to like find out who your target is before they find out who you are, and it's just really cool. The problem is there's about an hour and a half of movie before we even get to the climb. The majority of the movie is just like some of the weirdest dialogue I've ever heard in my life. I'm not gonna show you all of it because I would just show you the entire movie at that point because it's just weird. I mean, for 1975, it is weird.
Off you go.
His name is, Faggot.
That's cute.
Be careful he doesn't rape you. Charming.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, that's not even the weirdest stuff in the movie. There's just not enough time to cover all of it. And we gotta get through the actual climbing points of the video because this is a climbing channel after all. This is the part of the movie I was telling you about that just goes on forever. It's basically a combination of Clint Eastwood's character training and climbing to get good enough to make the ascent of this mountain while also fighting like an ex-spy buddy of his, and it has no effect on the plot whatsoever. Like, absolutely none. I do not understand why this is in here. That being said, this movie still is about rock climbing, and they do make a lot of references to rock climbing that really, you know, hit home to a lot of rock climbers. Like, we can all relate to references like this one.
My guests are more interested in hunting than they are in climbing.
Thought the whole point of climbing was hunting.
Damned if you ain't right, John. Damned if you ain't right.
After Clint Eastwood drops some much-needed climbing knowledge on us, we move on to what is probably the weirdest scene in the entire movie, in my opinion. There's no setup for this. I'm just gonna play the whole thing. It just does not make any sense.
Shut up and drink your beer. Oh, God, my.
All right, beat it, Buns. At least I know you're not here for the hunting.
I'm guessing this scene is in here just so that they could show him slapping her ass. I have no idea why they needed to have so much ass grabbing and slapping in this movie, but they really, you know, they went for gold with it. But she didn't even have a single line. Like, she didn't say, there was no line, there was no, like, her coming up and saying something and him being like, beat it, toots, or anything. It's just like, she just walked up and she was just staring at Clint Eastwood. Like, she's the weirdest one in this. Now, I don't want to spoil the final act of this movie where they're climbing the mountain because it's actually really good and, you know, if you want to watch it, you should check it out. But I also don't want to delve too deep into the middle of the movie because it's fucking boring and nothing happens. So really, I'll just leave you with a little montage of some of the cooler climbing scenes in the movie.
You want to lead? You've been up this before.
No, I'll just tag along.
This the right way?
It's one way, I guess.
You're a big help.
So that's the Eiger Sanction. It's a pretty mixed movie for me. I think if they had just kind of cut out the whole middle of the movie, it'd actually be kind of cool, unique premise. Like, they tied rock climbing and like being an assassin together really well, but there's just an entire like 45 minutes in the middle of the movie that just doesn't need to be there. It feels like this movie was just written by like 3 completely different people. Like, one of them really liked like James Bond spy thrillers, the other one really liked rock climbing, and the other one was just a fucking weirdo. But you take what you can get with what you got. I don't think that's a saying, but I'll leave you with one final question.
Tell me, Mr. Bowman, in your opinion, do these men climb to prove their manhood, or is it more a matter of compensating for inferiority feelings?
It's a little bit of both.